10 million pints of Guinness are consumed worldwide every day. The creamy stout, with its distinctive dark hue, has become synonymous with Irish identity itself. Walk into any pub from Dublin to New York to Sydney, and you'll find it on tap. But the true story of the family behind this iconic Irish brand reveals one of history's most fascinating paradoxes. Netflix's House of Guinness, created by Peaky Blinders mastermind Stephen Knight, premiered on September 25, 2025, offering a dramatic 8-episode exploration of the Guinness dynasty. Its tale of sibling rivalry, secret passions, political intrigue, and the weight of inherited power set against the backdrop of 1860s Ireland. But here's the uncomfortable truth that the show dramatizes but often romanticizes. The Guinness family, despite building their fortune on Irish soil with Irish labor, were amongst the most vocal opponents of Irish independence. Today, we're diving into the real story, separating fact from fiction, and exploring how one of Ireland's most famous families stood firmly against Irish freedom. Our story begins not in 1868, where Netflix's series opens, but over a century earlier. In 1759, Arthur Guinness, the first Arthur, signed what may be the most legendary lease in business history, a 9,000-year agreement on a disused brewery at St. James Gate in Dublin for just £45 annually. He was 34 years old, a Protestant Anglo-Irishman with ambition and brewing know-how. To understand the Guinness family's complex relationship with Ireland, we must understand the world they inhabited. The Guinnesses were part of the Protestant ascendancy, the privileged minority who held political and economic power in Catholic-majority Ireland. They were Anglicans in a land where Catholics faced severe legal restrictions, unable to vote, own property, or hold public office. The first Arthur was, by the standards of his time, relatively progressive in some ways. He hired Catholics for his brewery when most Protestants wouldn't, he advocated for Catholics to enter certain professions, and he founded the first Sunday school in Dublin. But he drew a hard line at revolution. In 1798, when the United Irishmen, a coalition seeking to overthrow British rule and establish an Irish republic, rose up, Arthur Guinness opposed it vehemently. He was even suspected of being a British informer, a tout. His son John was wounded fighting against the rebels. For Arthur Guinness, the first Arthur, rebellion meant economic disruption, violence, and a threat to the social order that allowed his brewery to flourish. His beer business and British stability were inseparable. Fast forward to Netflix's House of Guinness, where the series opens in May 1868 with the death of Sir Benjamin Lee Guinness, Arthur's grandson, who transformed the family brewery into one of the world's largest and most profitable companies. Benjamin was the wealthiest man in Ireland when he died. The show follows his 4 children: Arthur IV, the eldest son who inherited a title but allegedly harbored secrets, Edward, the ambitious third son obsessed with expansion, Anne, the only daughter navigating a man's world, and Benjamin, just trying to find his place. Stephen Knight's series creates a fictional character named Sean Rafferty, played by James Norton, a charismatic, brutal foreman who acts as the family's fixer. The show depicts Edward Guinness engaging in a romantic affair with Ellen Cochrane, a fictional Irish national activist, and portraying the family as having complex, sometimes sympathetic relationships with the Fenian movement, the Irish Republican Brotherhood fighting for independence. It's compelling television. The acting is superb, the production value is stunning, but here's where we need to separate fact from fiction. The reality was far less romantic and far more trouble. The Guinness family were not conflicted about Irish independence, they were staunchly, unequivocally opposed to it. Company records show that Guinness employees were required to pledge unequivocal opposition to Fenianism. Management positions were reserved entirely for Protestants until the 1960s, meaning Catholics could work at Guinness but only in lower-level positions. The notion that Edward Guinness would have a love affair with a Fenian activist? Pure fiction. There's no evidence for it whatsoever. The family viewed Irish nationalism as a direct threat to their wealth and the British market that their brewery depended on. The harp on the Guinness label? It was actually added by Benjamin in 1862, chosen as a distinctive trademark based on a medieval harp at Trinity College in Dublin, not as a political gesture. Ironically, the Irish government later adopted a similar harp symbol. But the most damning historical fact, in 1913, Edward Cecil Guinness, the real Edward's son, donated £100,000 to the Ulster Volunteer Force. To put that in perspective, that's equivalent to tens of millions of pounds today. For those that don't know, the UVF, the Ulster Volunteer Force, was a Protestant paramilitary organization formed to oppose Home Rule, the moderate proposal to give Ireland limited self-governance while remaining part of the United Kingdom. The UVF smuggled German rifles into Ireland and vowed to use all means necessary to resist Irish self-determination. The Guinness donation armed this resistance. It paid for weapons and training, and it funded the threat of civil war against even the mildest form of Irish self-governance. The response from Irish nationalists was swift. They organized a boycott of Guinness products, drinking Murphy's Stout instead. An IRA commandant later recalled for a time only Murphy's Stout was consumed locally. Then came 1916, the Easter Rising, Ireland's pivotal rebellion that would eventually lead to independence. Guinness trucks were converted into improvised armored fighting vehicles to fight against Irish volunteers. Whether these trucks were commandeered or donated remains disputed, but what's certain is that Guinness cooperated fully with British forces. During the fighting, officials from the brewery were seen leaning out of windows, watching captured Irish rebels being marched past, wearing what one witness described as a superior, contemptuous smile. On April 29, 1916, in the grounds of the Guinness brewery itself, the Royal Dublin Fusiliers murdered 2 civilians, both Guinness employees, along with 2 off-duty British soldiers, falsely claiming that they were Sinn Féin rebels. The Guinness family had a hard line against any employee displaying support for Irish republicanism. Workers were afraid to openly parade with the Irish volunteers, fearing victimization at work. After the Rising, Guinness dismantled staff suspected of involvement or sympathy with the rebellion. The family's complex relationship with Irish identity continued well into modern times. In 1982, during the Troubles and when the Irish government refused to back Britain in the Falklands War, a Guinness PR executive publicly stated that he was no longer sure the association with Ireland was helpful. He suggested the brewery might have to emphasize facts such as that Guinness was an English company. Only when the situation improved did Guinness marketing flip back to emphasizing its Irish heritage. So why does this matter? Why examine a century-old conflict when Ireland is now, for the most part, independent and Guinness is enjoyed worldwide? Because the story illuminates the complicated relationship between nationalism, class, religion, and economic power. The Guinnesses weren't cartoon villains, they were just products of their class and time. A Protestant elite whose wealth and identity were bound to the British Empire. They genuinely believed that union with Britain was best for Ireland, or at least best for their Ireland. They did engage in significant philanthropy. They built housing for Dublin's poor, they funded hospitals and schools, they paid their workers better than most Dublin employers, and offered unprecedented benefits including pensions, medical care, and sick pay. But this benevolence served strategic purposes, enhancing the family's social status, securing aristocratic titles, and maintaining political influence. While the Netflix series doesn't entirely whitewash this history, the show depicts political tensions and portrays the family's complicated position. But by inventing sympathetic relationships between the Guinnesses and Fenian activists, it softens the historical reality. Stephen Knight himself acknowledged he had to take things that these family members did, things that they said, achievements they made, mistakes they made, and use them as stepping stones to fill in gaps and create dramatic narrative. The show does announce at the beginning that it is inspired by true events, not a documentary. And that's fine, it's entertainment, not a history class. But for viewers who want the truth, the contrast is stark. Today, Guinness is owned by Diageo, a British multinational corporation. The brewery had no involvement in the Netflix series. The Guinness family remains one of the most famous dynasties in Irish and British history. Ireland achieved partial independence in 1922, though partition created Northern Ireland, which remained part of the United Kingdom, a division that would lead to decades of conflict. The modern Republic of Ireland is a thriving, independent nation, and Guinness remains its most famous export. The family's opposition to Irish independence is rarely mentioned in contemporary marketing. Guinness campaigns emphasize Irish heritage, craft tradition, and cultural authenticity. For most consumers, Guinness is simply Irish, full stop. But history is never simple. The Guinness story is a reminder that nations, identities, and symbols are contested terrain. The same pint that Irish nationalists once boycotted is now held up in Irish pubs worldwide as a symbol of Irish culture. The family that funded resistance to Irish self-governance built their fortune on Irish land and labor, and their product has become inseparable from Irish identity. The next time you see that iconic harp logo, remember, symbols can be claimed, reclaimed, and transformed. And history is written by the living, about the dead, often while enjoying a nice pint. Thank you so much for watching.